Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple podcast.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Westman here again, and welcome to my channel where I typically review and debunk nutritional information online, but occasionally I get to interview the movers and shakers in the keto, low carb, nutrition, medical world, and it's my great pleasure today to have Dr. Tro Kalayjian.
Thanks, Eric. I've looked up to you and called upon you as a mentor for probably a decade now. Wow, I'm getting old. Which means you're getting old.
Time flies when you're having fun. But so introduce yourself to someone who hasn't heard of you yet. So let's assume you're one of my patients and they're wondering why I would want to interview you.
So if you're one of Eric Westman's patients, I am Dr. Tro Kalayjian. I was nothing but an internal medicine doc, a little over 15 years ago, but I wouldn't say, nothing but. I was a very large 350-pound internal medicine doctor. I was the chief resident in an internal medicine, in a Yale affiliated internal medicine program. And I was 350 pounds. Every day hurt. Like it hurt to walk. My joints ached. My body ached. I was never, I never felt full of energy. I was always fatigued. And I was honestly, cognitively probably like 50% of my potential. Like I was just not living a life that I wanted to live. And honestly, it wasn't even me. Like I went into medicine, Eric. I was 220 pounds at the age of 13. So my older brother got up to 500 pounds. All the genes you wrote about, your textbook, FTO gene, MC4R, were homozygous for them. And my younger brother got up to 400 pounds. We were just a big, family, and I was a big doctor. And so when my wife said to me 11 years ago, "Are you going to be alive?" And when I started to go back to the literature, literally reading the obesity textbook you wrote, the little mini textbook. I don't know. Did you ever update that one, by the way, or do you guys update that? Or
No, I
it was
could be the last one. Yeah.
it was so good, by the way. It was so good. Um, so I tried to master medicine, right? Like I tried to master medicine, and then my wife played that. I scored on the 90th percentile on my board exam. It was like I was so arrogant about it. My wife was like, she knew me. She knew I was arrogant about it. She's like, "You're a smart guy. Go figure out why you're 350 pounds and miserable." And it wasn't for a lack of calorie information. It wasn't for a lack of knowing what calories were. And it was a hunger issue, right? I was always hungry, insatiably hungry. And so when I went to literature to see, well, what diets work for hunger, or what diets work just period for obesity, for metabolic syndrome, I mean, it was all there. Your 2004 study, your textbook, the head-to-head studies from in the New England Journal and JAMA, looking at Atkins versus. So it was all there. So that's who I am. I'm somebody who lost 150 pounds over a decade ago. I've kept it off. I've had food freedom. I would say I'm food addicted, and I've had food freedom for a decade. Not without its struggles. I still go up and down, and I have to battle. But and I've devoted my career basically to taking everything that you continue to work on, and just pushing it as however far down I can push it. We set up the SMHP together, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. We have 3,000, docs and health coaches that are looking to get certified. as a metabolic health doc. We've worked on papers together, and yeah, trying to make people like you not shake their head and go like this when they see a carnivore or low carb doc on social media, you know?
Well, so, oh gosh, that's you've gone so much farther. So, well, I guess I'll put, we've heard this story before where doctors end up being unable to be given the tools to help themselves, and then they have to find it out on their own. Did you get any training or uh, uh, through internal medicine and then residency and there were no GLP-1, there were no shots back then. So um, looking back is how do we help other health professionals? And of course, the SMHP is training people who are not necessarily MDs. I mean, so we've kind of figured out a way that you don't need to train MDs. In fact, we're kind of overqualified. We don't need to know how to take out an appendix to talk to someone about food. So just reflect for a moment back on that period of time, and thank goodness for your wife to kind of explain in a way that that you would understand that you had to figure this out.
Yeah, it's so if you look at the there's not a lot of resources out there. I mean, 10 years ago, my training was, your textbook, right? It was all the studies that Yancey had done, you had done, Shy and all that Gardner, some of his early work. And, that was it, right? That was it. And whatever organized education there was, it was vegan nonsense, right? And I got nothing against vegans, nothing against the diet, like go eat as many plants as you want, but it was propagandized nutrition information, that was a sort of bastardization from observational science, right? This was shoddy.
Had you done a vegan or vegetarian diet, plant-based diet, and you're searching?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I ate, brown rice. Like my wife would make fun of me. She's like, yeah, you were like the whole wheat pasta and brown rice king, you know? You were
I
the,
remember I gave a class for a long time, and I'd say no rice, no white rice, and then people that, well, how about brown rice? No, it's still
yeah,
rice,
yeah, yeah,
or the
yeah.
classic pasta. No pasta. What about whole grain pasta? Oh, so anyway, I'm
You know
sorry to laugh. It's
No, that was my life. That was my life. You know what? We to answer your question, you and I, we need to get like a med school to like. I mean, do you teach nutrition at Duke? Do you
only
teach like the
only to the medical student elective in the fourth year, and in residents who come through. There's no class where we're
yeah?
able to.
Why don't we need to like go back and reimagine medical school through a metabolic health
So
lens?
hold on,
You know?
stay tuned. I have a nibble, and I was planning on contacting you again later from a school that has enough inertia to make some change. So hang on. I have a lead. It's not firm, but it's hopefully we'll be able to help a school that would have leadership impact. So, but I just
Let's go.
but thinking about your background, you just thought it was in the family then. Everyone was like,
Well, it definitely was. I mean, we definitely look. We can throw down. I mean, I think Eric, we've had a steak together, and I impressed even you.
well,
Um, you know, so,
well, but
uh,
but then a lot of people are told that there's nothing you can do about it. It's just in your
yeah,
family. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was. Look, I struggled my whole life. I felt miserable. My family struggled. Watching my family struggle was why I went into medicine. My mom had to undergo bariatric surgery, and it's just, it's not, and when you're a doctor, you have the ability to start to understand. I don't think every doctor, but I think you start to have the ability to understand in systems thinking, like what are the systems here that are at play? Like what are, how did we get here? Where did this come from? And the sad thing is, most of medicine is still sort of guideline based and hasn't really adapted to, like, the pace of information now is so almost immediate, right? Like your study was published in 2004 looking at the triglyceride levels, right, for low carb and low fat. I mean, this is like 20 years ago. And still to this day, the NLA says do a low fat diet for high triglycerides,
I know.
right?
Well, so the pace of information does, the exchange has changed, but also does the disinformation, right? The brainwashing happens as well. And let's focus just a minute on internal medicine.
Yeah.
So you were at a excellent training, right? And in the human body, was it ever emphasized to you that what you ate mattered?
No, like, look, I had a great program, an absolutely amazing program. I was taught by the top minds at Yale, and I knew medicine like amazingly. Like they took me and they made me a great doctor, right? They make me the ability to come up with a differential, to aggregate information, to think in a way that prizes patient excellence. They gave me all of that, right? So what they didn't give me was critical thinking and anything on nutrition, right?
Yeah. Well, and just I think we need to toot our horns just a little bit. So internal medicine training is really in depth in the how diseases happen, how the body works. When organs fail, we're in there, right? Do you remember the saying that this was a flea collar and the stethoscope, and that internists were the last one to jump off a dying dog because there were fleas, Remember those sayings? That
Yeah.
well, so, but that meant, if an organ wasn't working right, we had to change and adapt thing. And even then, I remember being in the ICU taking care of people who were just really, really sick, multiple organ failure and sepsis and things like that. I think the only nutrition training I got was in TPN. The idea that total parenteral
Yeah.
nutrition, that no one, they can't eat. So, if the gut works, you use it. You put a tube in and you put tube feed in. But then the intravenous understanding is still kind of evolving. So that I remember a doctor researcher here nearby was trying to make choline a new essential nutrient. And I had no idea. You have to kind of lobby and get a bunch of people and expert opinion. And when I went over to his office, I thought this was really fascinating. They found that fatty liver happened with people on TPN, the total parenteral nutrition, and they were trying to figure out why this was happening. There wasn't enough choline in the TPN, and I looked on the wall, and choline is in eggs. Choline is in all these animal products, and so we think we know, or we were taught a certain way, when even today we don't know everything. And the reason I brought up TPN is it's kind of just understood. You would start and lead with dextrose. You would lead with sugar, right? You start by giving sugar, and then you add in proteins and amino acids and fat. But what if that sugar is turning off the ketones well, I know it's turning off ketones, but what if, so there actually is keto compatible TPN. where you don't add sugar, you don't add dextrose right away. And after traveling to a couple meetings, one in London, the public health collaboration, and one in Switzerland called Keto Live, I'm hearing stories now of doctors using TPN without sugar, allowing the natural ketones. It would be similar to just allowing someone not to eat at all, right? They would get the ketones generated. But had you ever heard of keto compatible TPN?
Yeah, I know. I've had to work with some companies making parenteral nutrition and TPN. So, they've come to me with sort of advice. So I know it's been on the horizon. I don't know if it's even out on the market yet or being, done or tested,
Well,
but that's interesting.
the box that's already there that is with people with the children with a seizure disorder, so that you avoid giving a seizure by stopping the ketones. But now I'm talking about anecdotes of reversing serious conditions that no one else could reverse, to the point that people were starving with gastroparesis. And there was something about allowing the ketones to be generated that reversed that problem. So, but I guess I wanted to show that there's even not only with food, but with intravenous feedings, we have certain ways of going about things that, oh, well, you have to have, dextrose comes first, sugar comes first. I wonder if, do you remember back to TPN and those days, or?
Oh my God, that's like a horror story when we had to sit down and calculate and, figure out what we're going to be giving to people who can't. So TPN, guys, is like, let's say you had a issue where you could not digest or you could not absorb, food, or maybe the gut needed a rest, or maybe the gut was, in shock or something, and we need to get you nutrition. We just put it through the IV. Of course, there would be infections that would come. I remember fungal infections would be the big one that comes from TPN, but we had to figure out how to give nutrition. And, it's sort of like uh, it's the part of medicine that's probably the most arcane, I would say, but like most sort of like apprentice follows the master type of medicine, but you have to calculate what somebody needs um and then give it
Well, of
through
course,
IV.
the uh, in my training in the 80s and 90s, there was a time when we let people for a few days or a week not eat. I mean, it wasn't already, the pendulum went then so far as to everyone who hits the door needs some kind of feeding right away, so you can get them out of the hospital. But when I reflect back, that not feeding someone allows people to generate ketones, so that the feeding, the unintended consequence of feeding someone immediately when they hit the hospital with sugar is that you turn off ketones. If they might be helpful for heart failure, they might be helpful for sepsis, all these different things. So anyway, that I'm hoping, especially at the patient level, if you have someone, or someone who's been on TPN for a year, and I've heard of this in my patient mix, where they've been unable to digest at all, and they're not you can't be on TPN that long for that infection risk. That's just, if there was another way to go about it. So anyway, I that was on my mind.
Well, let's create the soundbite. I mean, like, let's even go to the nutrition in the hospitals. If you're on tube feeds, it's a disaster. It's basically corn syrup. It's basically corn syrup, maltodextrin, sugar, and corn oil or soybean oil, right? That is, plus vitamins, right? This is what they're giving to people with sepsis in feeding tubes in people's noses. If you can't eat, you know, and the diabetes formula of that just has like 20% less sugar and high fructose corn syrup. I mean, it's like, it's still garbage. And yet, we give this. And here's the worst part, those companies that make those, which is Abbott Nutrition and all that, you know, they also make the formulas in this, the baby formula in this country, which is no different.
So they're turning off the ketones right when you go to bottle feeding, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Well, so now switching gears a little bit, you decided to create the Low Carb MD podcast. Tell me about that and why.
Yeah.
Why?
So, well, yeah. So in 2018, I was sent. I mean, like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you, and Eric, you've had like sort of the Duke behind you. You've gone through a lot, certainly, right? And you've published these studies, and you were the president of the OMA, right? I'm a punk kid, right? Like coming out of, residency, talking smack on social media. Yeah, I lost 150 pounds. So in 2018, the Medscape wrote an article about me saying this doctor called fruit poison, by the way. Like this is what they wrote about me, right? It is a hit piece. So I needed an outlet to be able to like interview people, learn, get out there, and get some of this, get smart people like you out into the sort of lay public. This is before Joe Rogan, and YouTube sort of took off. Yeah, and I mean, we're still going strong. We're 400 episodes in, 20 million downloads. It's great. But, I've set my sights on, other things. We've published stuff together, and, I'm continuing to add to the literature now as best as I can to, not just for metabolic health. We wrote that, paper against the AAP and the the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the fact that, they're taking government money now, and then they're saying that, kids should not do a low carb diet or not, cut sugar and analysis, but they should, if you want to do it, you need to do 23 blood tests, by the way, right?
Monitoring
Yeah.
safety. Well,
Yeah, but the GLP-1 drugs, you could just start those. There's no mention of checking labs, by the way.
I know.
Despite the fact that the calcitonin rises up, in a big portion of, and there's those links to thyroid cancer. So, this is the problem. We're in an era of gaslighting medicine, and back then when I was calling the stuff out, I mean, it was so controversial. 2018, Eric, I said that, food is having an issue, is improving addiction, right? The ketogenic diet is improving addiction. And I had doctors saying that I should have my license pulled. They wrote this article about me in Medscape saying that this quack doctor is saying, that fruit is poison. Just this past week, Medscape wrote an article saying I'm revolutionizing, obesity care. Just this week,
Well,
right? It took 8 years, 9 years.
well, that but it's because you hung in there, right?
I've had people like you to tell me to calm down a little bit. That's what.
No, you have to. I remember a mentor of mine, and I asked, "Why are you so frenetic all the time?" If you're not frenetic, nothing ever gets done. So,
Yeah.
So to the addiction thing, and I have to say, one of the presentations you gave was so memorable for me and so great because it was at the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners meeting, and it had a system view and all that. But you also brought in the idea of addiction, and then you're one of many other doctors who told me, Eric, you weren't overweight and obese, so you just don't know. And I'm like, well, but I listen to a lot of people, and because my story is I just heard two of my patients had success, and I went down that path. So switching now to addiction, I mean, from your own experience and now teaching other people, and now to a journal article that just came out. Tell me how you communicate this.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but my first case series was with Shabani Sethi and you back in 2020 and 2019, right? So we, I noticed this, and this came, after the entire internet, was saying, who is this guy saying that food can, people could be addicted to food. So we published that case series because, the APA and, the dietitians say that, you can't restrict food in eating disorders, and food addiction and binge eating are very clearly eating disorders, and they don't want you to restrict food. And I don't want to say it was silly. I mean, it's a pretty good thought. Like, okay, if you restrict somebody, right, what you're going to do is you're going to cause them to compulsively eat, that thing that you're restricting at some point later, right?
Well,
Right? Yeah, like,
but think about it. Should we restrict people from smoking? Well, it's a nice idea, but it doesn't work. I mean, you have to restrict people from cigarettes if they're going to.
yeah. Well, so let's fast forward, right? We've since then, we had a committee come together to agree on the definition of ultra processed food addiction. We certainly since then have a defined diagnosis of binge eating, and it's important to have these things because it governs how we cover them, how we communicate as doctors, right? We can say, these are entities that we're dealing with. We all know food addiction when we see it. I mean, the patient comes in, says, I'm chocoholic, and is eating chocolate despite having an amputation like 6 months ago, right? That would be an example. But the hallmarks of addiction are control, loss of control, the 3 C's: loss of control, compulsion, right? Feeling compelled, called to that, and then consequences, continued use despite consequences. So, the way that plays out, the problem is it's super complicated, right? Like, and we talked about this once before, you and I. Like, the average person who's coming to us is, probably predominantly 50 to 60, right? Predominantly female, maybe 2/3 female, 1/3 male, right? Um, you know, and they are probably somebody who's lived a life of restriction. Like, they ate rice cakes, they did the watermelon diet, they did the pea soup diet, they did the banana diet, right? So when they come to you and me, they are so nutritionally depleted. You were talking about choline. Choline is just one of those, right? You look at their B12, it's low. Their vitamin, I've seen single digit vitamin Ds. So here's the problem. Food addiction is directly related to a nutritionally, minerally, and protein deplete society, right? So let's say you back that out. Let's say you address the food, right? The food probably does like 40% of the work, right? Or 50% of the work. If you give somebody healthy food, and their relationship to food will improve. So that's one part of it, right? And then allowing them not to partake in our modern food environment, which is intermittent fasting. It's like, you can abstain from our food environment. That's intermittent fasting, right? Everybody talks about this. How many conferences have you gone to where some moron doctor gets up and says, it's our food environment? And then the next sentence is, how do you feel about intermittent fasting? Oh, it's an eating disorder, right? Like, but intermittent fasting is literally saying you can abstain from our food environment, right? You can abstain for this certain amount of time. So these modalities offer some fighting chance, right, to food addiction. And then there's like the emotional component and the psychological component, which, I'll give you like an example. I think that's super easy that the average listener can hear. Like, I care about my car. I care about my health, right? My wife the other day saw that I had a flat tire and said, Tro, you really don't drive. I just saw that you have a flat tire. I'm worried about you. Just take a look at it before you go, and just don't drive until we get it fixed. And Eric, I felt like, oh my God, this woman loves me. Like, she's just looking after me. She cares about me. She's supporting me. I felt gratitude, right? Just last night, my wife was like, why don't you put those salted almonds down? And I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, who are you to tell me what to do? right? Like I was angry. Excuse my language. Cut that out, editors. Like I didn't curse at my wife. I was just like sort of speaking out my subconscious, which felt anger and agitation, right? And stubborn.
I met her. I think she'd be okay. It was a
Yeah.
figure of speech. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like, so if you look at it, look at my feelings, right? It's the same thing. My wife cares about my car. My wife cares about me. She's telling, don't do that thing that's going to potentially harm it. Not that there's anything wrong with salted almonds, but she knows I can overdo those, and look at the emotional reactions.
So why is it so different?
Well, so look at the emotional reactions and follow the money. When I feel support and gratitude because she found the flat tire, I fix the car. When I feel anger, agitated, opposition, defiant, what do I do with my wife? Like, leave me alone. And I double down. I eat even more. You can't tell me what to do. Right. So these emotions that we don't control, we think we're in control. Everybody wants to blame themselves. I have willpower. I need to do better. I need to do this. But you didn't choose that emotion. You didn't choose to feel stubborn and oppositionally defiant. You didn't choose to get angry when somebody said, don't eat that. Right. You didn't choose that. You left to reconcile that. It's not a choice. Right. You have to deal with the fact that the emotions came. So that's part of that food addiction. It's that the emotions aren't in line with what you want to do. I don't want to have excessive nuts, right? But my emotions aren't supporting it. So this is like that part of the solution is very easy. Just put the nuts down and thank your wife, right?
Yeah.
Just put
The addiction gets into all of these cycles. I remember a book, the existentialist, the Little Prince. Little Prince goes to different planets, and then they lampoon different people on different planets. It means you're not talking about people on Earth, But so the Little Prince goes to the planet with the alcoholic on it, and he says, "Why do you drink?" And the alcoholic says, "To forget." And the Little Prince says, "To forget what?" And the alcoholic says, "That I drink." And so you get into all of the, I'm angry because I'm not in control, but the anger makes me not in control. And
100%, 100. I cannot tell you how insightful what you just said is, because then when you eat the almonds, you feel like crap. And that's when you feel like crap, you eat more almonds.
So, I guess I had the benefit of starting my weight loss and career at a residential fitness program here at Duke. The Durham had 3 programs at the time, all different kinds of food, but the Duke Diet and Fitness Center also kind of had the rich clients come to town. They would spend a week or a month. And I saw people who were in total control of their financial world and jobs had total lack of control for food. And it was not just, it wasn't steak. It wasn't, these people had personal chefs, and yet they couldn't get over this addiction. And so the addiction is not just to food. It's, in my mind, it's to sugar.
I think sugar is the main component. If you said, what about the food, it's sugar and processed carbs, right?
Well, but so sugar, I mean, pasta, rice, nuts, salt, it all gets digested to sugar. So
100%.
so the sugar, its starch gets digested to that. Now nuts are a little different because they are super low in carbs. And I went around
nuts are
a morning at some conferences, probably about 5,000 people all told, never in the same room at once, but I would love to do that one day. In fact, I thought maybe we could get 10,000 people on little squares on the video screen. I don't know how to do that, but to chime in, all about, keto is great, or low carb, or carnivore. But anyway, I would ask people, how many of you have trouble with nuts? In the hands, well, at least half the people couldn't control nuts. So what is it about nuts?
So nuts and cheese are sort of unique. but you're bringing up a great
Problematic.
point. They're problematic. Yes, 100%. I would say, dairy just in general, but I think when I go to nuts and cheese, I think about it the more evolutionarily, but I want to step back. Food is a polysubstance addiction, right? So there's the sugar, the carbohydrate, maybe potentiated by some processed fats, maybe salted, maybe sweeteners, maybe additives, right? It is a polysubstance, addiction. But the nuts and cheese are problematic. I just wrote a post about this. I said the absolute healthiest way for me to gain weight is to eat nuts and cheese, right? It's and I think the nuts
Okay.
is the fact that it's a combination of carbs and fat, just enough carbs to keep you going. And it's also the way that we eat it. It's you know,
Yeah.
uh, it's salted, it's roasted, um,
Well,
so I
I'll
think
go
that
through times when I'll have no nuts for a month, or I'll get the pistachios and the shells. But I can unshell pistachios and have my fingernails down to the quick. So, but anyway, what is it about cheese?
I think so let's go to evolution also, back to that. Like a quick little story, you know, um, this is about a decade ago. I remember my wife went to Costco and she got like a Costco pack of peanut butter, and she took everything out of the car, and I helped her. We got everything, but I guess we took out this big, multi-pack of peanut butter and we left it outside. And the next day, I guess like a squirrel literally chewed through the plastic of the peanut butter jar and ate the entire jar of peanut butter. Now, is that squirrel addicted to peanut butter? Like, I don't know. Does he feel
Go your a jar of peanut butter. That's
right?
cheese. Yeah.
Yeah, does he feel shame and guilt? Is he doing it to self-soothe? I think these are important questions that make food addiction a little unique compared to other addictions, right? It's complicated, but certainly they call to him. I've never seen a squirrel like eat a couple acorns and then just stop. They stuff their faces, they hide and sneak, acorns into stashes, right? They're like, so there's something about nuts that, and I'm not sure that we know what it is, but certainly what we know is the carb fat combination, the roasting, the salt makes these all really amazing. With dairy, I think it's also, if you look at it evolutionary, the purpose of this thing is to make another mammal eat. Right? This is like it's evolutionary purpose. Like we talk about, us processing, right? We have processed food to make them more edible and more likable and whatever. Evolution has made this thing so that a baby latches on and doesn't stop, right? And goes back to it and back to it. Now, how does it do it? I mean, there's this talk of casomorphins, maybe having some opioid-like properties. It's carbs and fat. It's carbs and fat also. So, is that the issue? Is it maybe the type of fatty acid, like that differentiates both of those versus meat? That's another thought, right? So I don't know,
Yeah. How now this is ringing to levels of I worked for years with a smoking cessation expert, nicotine expert, and his contribution to the field was the non-nicotine parts of smoking. It was the consuming. It was the behavior of smoking. It was the, having a ritual of things to do, and it wasn't just nicotine. So now what about the behavior of eating? So some people find, the consumatory behavior, the crunch, the idea of filling the stomach, and even then getting to the milk and all, it's the consuming of the milk and the food. And as a son of a psychiatrist, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of baggage with food, and the dairy, I never really thought of dairy as the milk and milk products, from a cow as being something that was connected to breastfeeding, for example. And that's like the child psychiatrist's bailiwick of all of the consequences of that connection.
Well,
Wow.
well, you hit the nail on the head with it. We're brought into this world with soothing, right? So like, we've manipulated an environment. So like, you're not wrong. Baby cries, baby gets bottle. Toddler cries, toddler gets ice cream.
Then we become internists and we forget all that, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, no, we are 100%. We are. It is the easiest way to get happy hormones in our modern world, right? Like, we're having less sex, right? We're less, have less religion than we had years ago. I'm not saying we exercise. Basically, it hasn't gone up or down.
Wait, that came by too fast. That went by too fast.
Okay.
The best sex.
So, the ADHD,
That's a
my David used to, yeah. No, but like, if you look at the ways that we get pleasure or fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
Let's say prayer, meditation. Let's just say all the ways that we've decided is good. Prayer, meditation.
phone was ready. I needed. No, I'm just joking. And
No, 100%, 100% of the phones take us away from that. But prayer, meditation, exercise, community, right? Like laughter with friends, the antithesis of the phone. All these things are gone or going, right? And so, where are we left to get our happy hormones from if it's not connection, if it's not laughter, if it's not prayer or meditation or exercise, right? Like, you take my kid right now, my 8-year-old kid, and you lock him in and you prevent him from exercising, his mood goes down, right? And you take him away from all his friends and his mood goes down, right? And you take away his routine or his discipline or whatever, his mood goes down.
Yeah.
So, and you give him garbage food, what happens? His mood, momentarily goes up. And he's desperate for that food now because he's so low in dopamine, he's so low in like other hormones, serotonin, whatever. He's not fulfilling. Of course, he's gonna go to like the Hershey's bar. So what you're describing, with your father being a psychiatrist and like the fact that, we all sort of go back to childhood, a lot of this stuff does go back to how our society works and what's happened. And we have a dopamine deficient society, right? Like, or, like that's why we crave it. Our baseline levels are like, we're not getting what we need.
But that makes me think now for the 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds in our office. So many of them told me that when they were 10 years old, they were put on Weight Watchers. They started gaining weight, which we know is from carbs, right? And Weight Watchers did not do a great job of limiting carbs during that era.
And now bankrupt.
Yeah. And well, I think they look at pushing the GLP-1 shots, right? But so if you went all of your life without, and when you said people do all these other diets and all, they rarely did Atkins or they rarely did a low carb diet because it was bad for you, And so you're told your whole life that you have to eat these things that don't make you feel good, and you're struggling to find all these other ways to feel good. Isn't there hope that if we teach that it's really although too many of those carbs and all, and we get back to the reasonable way of eating for children, even this could change pretty quickly, couldn't it?
So
you're not
that was studied
about this.
Oh, I'm very pessimistic, but look, what we see in our clinic, and you see this. So like, we have an amazing job, right? Like 10 years ago, I was miserable, hurting, in pain, hungry all the time. And now, people come to me and they say, well, you have so much discipline. You haven't had bread in 10 years, or you haven't had, a slice of pizza in 10 years, Eric. I'm probably a lot more strict than you are, but when you feel pain, you don't want to go back. When you suffer, it's so easy for me. It's like, no, I would never stab myself. Like it's that disconnect, that is gone, right? That connection that food means health. Once you make a patient click with that, it's very hard to go back. And what we found in this paper, like we published in Frontiers earlier this year on weight loss. At 1 year, it was 43 pounds, which was 15.5% of weight, of their body weight, which I was very proud of because when I was talking to you, I'm like, Eric, metabolic health is like a blockbuster drug. We're sitting on a gold mine,
Yeah.
and we are. Like our practice beats Ozempic. We showed that, right? Like it's not a
Yeah.
head-to-head study, but we just took.
And that was a workplace study, right? So the
Correct. Yeah.
company
Yeah.
hires your group to go in and help, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, so we added on to that. We said, well, what happens to their relationship to food? Right. So then we looked to see, okay, well, what happened to their relationship to food? And that was this study in Frontiers of Psychiatry, what we published. Their relationship to food, it did exactly what you'd imagine. This sort of multimodal approach focused on nutrition, it lowers binge eating, by 45%, food addiction symptoms and severity by 45%. 80% of people either, modestly improve or significantly improve, right, for binge eating and food addiction symptoms. And if you look at that, like, well, how does that relate? Because the average person out there may not know how that relates. A calorie restricted diet will not help food addiction symptoms at all, right? And let's say for binge eating, right, amphetamines, right, the starting dose of amphetamines help binge eating by about 40%. So our intervention, the sort of a multimodal interactive clinic, right, with remote monitoring and what we do, but texting, online visits, the app, it improves binge eating more than amphetamines. Now those amphetamines cost like $200-300 a month, and they come with side effects. You can't sleep, like you're hopped up. Like I'm not saying it's an all or nothing, right? Now GLP-1s, right? Those are like the new kid on the block. Well, not really, but we've had so many patients who they're no longer effective for it, right? Or they never worked, or they couldn't tolerate it for nausea. Well, what do we do for them, right? So GLP-1s, lower these symptoms by about 40 to 60%, a little bit more than what we saw in our program, right? If you analyze the data, like do a systemic analysis of all the data of all these interventions, but we're within striking distance, right? And we're like, a fraction of the cost, right? And there's so many people, and in this particular food addiction study and binge eating study, 5 people came off GLP-1s and 2 people were started on them. So basically we're net negative. It's not like people are like, well, what if it's the drugs causing the effect? No, we stopped these drugs in more people than we started them.
Yeah.
So, it just shows what we showed back in 2020, which is actually ketogenic real nutrition, giving people choline, which is one of the nutrients from the, ketogenic diet, and protein and all the minerals, right? And the B12 and, everything, if you give them these foods and you do it in a supportive environment, their symptoms improve. And you don't have the, 40% muscle loss that you would with a GLP-1 drug. So we have now like a dedicated, GLP-1 off-ramp program, focused on exercise and focused on sort of sustaining a diet. And then, we have a food addiction recovery program that's putting all these things into a sort of organized pathway. So I'm just trying to take that next step. Hopefully one day somebody will say, let's give this crazy guy a couple $1 million, and Eric, and they can go do a study. But, until then, we have the
Kind of like
audience.
Dr. Atkins said to me, why would I want to do a study? I've been doing this 30 years. This was, 1998. He had a point. I mean, so this already works, and a study would be helpful to convince someone else. But um, when I see what you're doing with the Dr. Tro, how do people find your company now?
Yeah, so Tor Health is the company, and
Toward
now, yeah, Tor Health, and you can find us hopefully with your employer. So if you're listening to this and you are you want to help decrease healthcare costs and improve sort of healthcare awareness and metabolic health. Yeah, you just want to improve this in the workplace, contact us. And we work with 10 companies now.
Great.
And then we have a free app. You don't even need, I know Adapt does a lot of free stuff. We also do free stuff, the Tor Health app, and you do YouTube for free. We have the podcast for free. I mean, I'm not going to, you and I see everybody. So, utilize our free stuff.
Well, I have to dream just a little bit. I hope that you and the company and your approach, which is very similar to the Virta model. It's high touch. You're connected. I hope it has that same success. I mean, so that, and Virta is targeting type 2 diabetes. I think, well, and now I think they're going to obesity with other GLP-1s even, but you'll be able to help people who don't just have diabetes, right? You're not targeting just that group.
Yeah, we are we're a chronic disease company, so we want to reverse. We're basically a get healthy, get off drugs company, right? Like if you're in the, employee wellness world, we tackle chronic disease. We want the highest risk, sickest patients with the most spend, with the most, that's who we want. We want to get people healthy. If you're out there in the real world, like we get you off drugs and we get you healthy. And it's hard to do because, Virta, we're very high touch point. Everybody gets a health coach. Everybody gets a medical assistant. You're getting remote. I mean, this. We have remote scales, blood pressure cuffs, CGMs. I mean, I bet you're like, Tro, you don't need to do all that, but we do all that,
Well, no,
Yeah.
I think it's extremely helpful. I wish everyone could have it, and but
We'll get there.
The idea of a self-insured company saving money, it's a no-brainer, right? So that when I got into that for a moment of trying to market services like this, that most companies outsource even their health insurance, but if it's self-insured, then so if you're watching this, check out if your company is self-insured and explain to personnel that means they're going to save the money directly that you save them, right? So it's unlike insurance health insurance companies that are sort of middlemen and all, right? Is that what you're understanding?
Yeah, Eric, you got it 100% right. If you're at a company with over 100 people, more than likely your company is paying for all their healthcare costs, right? And when I first started doing the employee wellness sort of cohorts and papers, this was like 2021, and our first group was a really sick group, and we showed that we were able to save about $4,000 a year just in drug costs. And this is while their A1Cs went down, 1%, while stopping medications, while losing 30 pounds, while their blood pressure came down, 17 points. And, where, you mentioned Virta is just doing diabetes. We're looking at everything. If your reflux is better, let's get you off reflux medications. If your mood is better, let's taper the mood medications. I mean, the blood pressure is like the easiest one. We saw, 17-point drop in blood pressure. When we did our second study, we took a pre-diabetic cohort. They were pre-diabetic and overweight instead of having diabetes, right? They were less sick. We still saved like $2,500 a year, right, in drug costs in a less sick cohort. So it's so at this point, we don't charge the company unless we produce results, and we're confident enough to be able to do that. And I think the employers, the self-funded companies, if you're an HR department somewhere listening to this, they love that because we have to get people healthy. We don't have a choice. That's how we get paid. So if you're coming to see us, like that's the culture you're getting. You're getting somebody who's, I don't get paid if you don't get better. Right? There's no better relationship.
Part of the deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's,
really, you're kind of working on commission.
it's not commission. It's everybody's interests are aligned. Our company, we get paid if you get healthy, right? Period. If
Yeah.
your A1C doesn't fall, don't lose weight, right? We're not getting paid.
Well,
Right?
that's
So-
what it should be, right?
Yeah.
So maybe-
So, but yes. So, but like I think, it's hard. It's hard to do this, Eric. You should, one day maybe, you and I can. It's not easy to do this, and maybe that's why we've gone. When we've published these papers, it's the text messaging, the online sort of visits, the wellness coaches and doctors, the app and the engagement. You do that with Adapt. You're already doing this. You have the whole stack. You have your YouTube, you have Adapt, you have your clinic. Imagine smashing them all together now, right? And layering raw monitoring, right?
But it's it doesn't fit into the old mindset that you have to pay something to get better health, because you're actually saving money when you're getting better health.
Because the employees don't pay anything. You want to know what's crazy? The employees don't pay anything for us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So we work with 10 companies. The employees get this for free.
Yeah.
Which is what a blessing, But then we have the direct to consumer. So if you're out there listening to this and you want to work with Dr. Laura or Mary, our PA, we have a direct to consumer, segment as well.
Right.
But yeah, hopefully we'll keep doing good work, keep pushing the boundaries. I'm hoping for the day that you're going to come join us, Eric. That'll be my God, what a day that would be.
Well, you never know. And I have to just say that I've been influenced by lots of people, including you. And at Adapt, we are just opening the first Carnivore Made Simple course as we speak this week. So I had learned a lot, and I'm not so sure people need any sort of vegetable matter at all anymore. And the changes in health that we see focusing on the animal-based products, although you can do it in different ways, it's just unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think carnivore is just a really great, easy elimination diet, really clear food rules. It's a very viable approach. It's a very viable approach to start with. So I'm excited. I saw that. I'm excited for your course.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah, I have one of the CEOs of one of the companies that works with us. His wife is doing your course, so
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah, we haven't targeted. We don't. It's more passive, directly to the consumer with our reaching out to get customers. But all of the above, the corporate focus, it just allows for that quick scalability, but I guess any fun, so the new paper on addiction, food addiction, congratulations on that. And I know how hard it is to get that out. I'm thinking, how do I find your podcast? Is Low Carb MD podcast?
yeah. So you go to podcasts, YouTube, wherever, Low Carb MD, and the clinic is Health. And anywhere on social media, I'm at Dr. Tro, spelled out. You can come find me.
How do you find people for your podcast? Do you have a scout, or do people approach you, or?
I mean, we've never had a scout well, now we kind of have a scout, but Jack, our sound editor, has been helping so much, but it's just been sort of like, hey, Eric, you want to come on this week? That type of thing.
But then you also reach out and talk to people who've had success, right? And then have you found a doctor yet who is in charge of TPN who wants to try something new?
I gotta do that. I gotta find a PhD in nutrition or something like that, or one of those RDs. Yeah, we have, the podcast has been great. We're 400 episodes in, Low Carb Empty podcast. If you have, 500 hours to kill, you have a huge plethora. You can follow us. I think the COVID years were great years, to see sort of how docs maybe challenge the status quo. And I think it's been great. I mean, you like, being able to work with people, interview people. I mean, isn't it a blessing? We're blessed, Eric.
Yeah, I feel that way. So thank you so much for your time today, and Dr. Tro Kalayjian.
Yeah.
One of a kind. I love it, and just never give up. Good things will happen, I'm sure.
Thanks, Eric.
Take care now.
If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.